Well, as we know, the Issue 1 special election is tomorrow, and so voters will decide whether to change the way Ohio amends its constitution.
So to break down the impact Issue 1 could have in our state and on you if it passes, our legal analyst Stephanie Haney is here with us. Steph, legally speaking, can you give us an example of how things will change if Issue 1 does in fact pass tomorrow?
Sure, Laura and Isabel, it's all around percentage of voters who show up to vote. Now, voter turnout varies a lot in Ohio when it's not a presidential election year, but in last year's November election, a little over 4.2 million people voted in the state of Ohio. So we'll use that number of voters as our example. If Issue 1 passes tomorrow, then using last year's voter turnout, it would take 2,520,000 votes to pass an amendment to our Ohio Constitution. Now, if Issue 1 fails tomorrow, then again, using last year's voter turnout, it would take 2,100,001 votes to pass the same amendment. That's a difference of 419,999 votes needed to pass the same amendment to Ohio's Constitution. Now, if Issue 1 passes, you'd need those additional votes to get a new constitutional amendment passed. So if Issue 1 passes, roughly around 420,000 more people become very important to groups supporting amendments to our state constitution.
Okay, so let's look at this when it comes to long term. If Issue 1 passes, what does this mean for the November election?
That's a great question because that's coming up right around the corner. So if Issue 1 passes, it goes into effect right away, and this makes a big difference to at least one and probably two constitutional amendments that voters will likely see on the November ballot. So first, we know for sure that a constitutional amendment that aims to protect access to abortion in Ohio will be on the ballot in our November election. Second, it is very likely that a constitutional amendment seeking to legalize recreational use of marijuana for Ohioans over the age of 21 will also be on the ballot. We're just waiting to hear if the group proposing that amendment submitted enough valid signatures to make it on there. Now, if Issue 1 passes, these two amendments will have to reach that 60% threshold in order to become part of our state constitution. That would also mean that more than half of the people who vote in November could agree that these two amendments should pass, and they could still not become part of our state constitution if Issue 1 passes. That's what the people who oppose Issue 1 mean when they say that Issue 1 gets rid of majority rule.
Okay, and always important to get out the vote. So what do people need to know if they are heading to the polls tomorrow?
Ohio's new voter ID laws are in effect, and that's very important for people to know. That means when you show up to vote in person tomorrow, you have to have a government-issued ID with you. So that's like an Ohio driver's license, a state ID card, or an interim ID card from the BMV. And that ID has to have your name on it, and it has to substantially match your name as it appears on the voter registration list at your polling place. You also have to have your photo on it, and it can't be past its expiration date. Now, it is okay if your address isn't up to date on your ID, as long as your address is up to date on the voter registration list at your polling place. And polls are open tomorrow, just a reminder, from 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. And remember, if you're in line by 7:30 p.m. and you stay in line, you have to be allowed to vote. So do not get out of line if you find yourself in that situation, so you can make sure your voice is heard.
Yeah, big deal.
Always good reminders, Steph. Thank you. And as polls open tomorrow, if you still have questions on voting or the special election, we break it all down right here on WKYC.com.